What's up guys, Jenkins here from Team Leviathan, and this week I'm going to do a guide on how to make a semi-professional team in Dota 2, or how do you get into the semi-professional scene for Dota 2. And this is kind of something that we just get asked a lot. Uh, Firstly, I kind of want to put a big disclaimer here that this guide is only going to cover how we came into existence as Team Leviathan, and we're an American team, so I can't speak for any European teams because I have little to no experience in the European scene. However, for a North American player, this is almost always the path that players will follow to get into the scene. First, I'd like to talk just a little bit about actually finding your teammates, and there are some really good resources for this, like Reddit and the Join Dota community forums, where you can actually find full teams to play with. But what I would highly suggest is either playing with your current friends to start with, or just do pubs and in-house leagues and just add people that you click with. The most important thing to look for in a teammate, I don't think is actually skill. I think it's one, that you enjoy playing with them, and two, that they're willing to commit to improving with you. And I think the second one is probably the most important thing. Mechanical skills are really, really easy to acquire. You just need to practice, right? Whereas a good attitude really isn't. That's something that you kind of have. The number one thing I want to stress about making a Dota team is that every player on the team is self-critical. Self-criticalness is defined as tending to find fault within one's own actions, motives, and so forth. This is the most important thing for forming a team, especially in the game of Dota, because there are an unbelievable amount of things happening just within one match. There's no possible way to fully quantify or explain why you lost a match, because a bad decision, a good decision, or a combination thereof can cause a butterfly effect that makes or breaks a game. It can be a useless process to look at an entire game and say, what went wrong? Whose fault was it? Because it was everybody's fault. And in the end, you can only change how you played. For this reason, I think the most important thing is to forget the notion of fault entirely, and be critical of just your own play, because only you know what you were thinking when you made a bad decision. You don't need to follow a replay or empathize with someone emotionally to understand a play. You lived it, and you can change it. You can cut out the middleman and effectively coach yourself this way. The first step in doing this, in my opinion, isn't to think, man, I suck at Dota. More so, you need to look at the game and realize that nobody is a jack of all trades. You can be the king of one hero and just absolutely terrible at another one. The same goes for laning, playstyle, ganking, and so forth. I think you should look at the game and realize that you have room to grow. Everybody does, regardless of how everybody else on your team is playing, and for that reason you should focus on yourself. And if your team focuses on themselves, all bases are going to be covered in terms of eliminating the maximum number of misplays in a game. It's just more efficient that way. The next step I'd like to talk about is actually signing up for amateur tournaments. Amateur tournaments, at least in America, are your best friend for getting into the scene. Amateur tournaments have two jobs, which I will talk about. First off, the top teams from the region may not play in the amateur tournaments, but the players from them usually do. And typically, the teams they play on will be extremely challenging to beat, so they do that for fun usually. Unfortunately, most amateur tournaments are open bracket tournaments, which means that in order to play against extremely good players, you're going to have to spend 5 to 8 hours straight playing. This is something you should kind of just commit to week after week. At some point, you're going to start consistently making it far in the open bracket, and this is when you'll really start to figure out your group play and decision making. Moreover, if you can beat a team with some of the known players on it, you're going to gain respect of those players, casters, and even some scouts for tournament invites. It's fairly typical for organizations who are hosting tournaments to have contacts that know about the amateur scene for invites. So if you play in enough amateur tournaments and you have a good showing, you'll start getting invited to medium level tournaments. In North America, I would highly, highly recommend the Semi-Pro Evening Cup, which is a weekly series on Thursday and Sunday. We pretty much owe our entire gaming career to this tournament for our success, and I think a huge list of North American teams and players do. It's just a weekly tournament that all the pro players in North America, or at least a lot of them, playing for fun, so it's really, really good for getting noticed. The next topic I'd like to quickly touch on is mechanical skills. So everybody knows MMR doesn't matter, but mechanical skills do. you need to be able to press your buttons just as fast as the other guy, and in order to do that effectively, you need to be able to not only make split-second decisions, but you need to make good decisions as well. In order to do this, you're going to need to practice against players who are also mechanically skilled, or you're not going to be challenged, which means that either your MMR has to be high, or you're going to want to play in an open league like NEL, IXDL Open, or EEL. So you may need to do some heavy lifting, boosting your MMR, and that's just something you have to grind out because it is worth it for practice. And as the meta changes, heroes are going to get added to Captain's Mode. You're going to have to adjust and learn new things mechanically, and these leagues and pubs are very, very good for doing that. The learning's never going to stop. So if someone on your team is averse to learning right off the bat, it may not even be worth it to be on a team with them at that point, because it is very important to keep up mechanically. So now I'm going to actually talk about what to do when you have a team and everyone's improving, everyone has a good attitude, and the mechanical skills are good. So once you have all of that, you need to start working on your group play. For this, scrims are very, very important. They're the building blocks of being an amazing team. This is something that your team needs to schedule and figure out when everyone is available to play. This needs to be like your job. Finding teams to scrim opponents can sometimes be difficult, and I'll touch on that a little bit later. As a team, it's very important during scrims to talk about rotations and movements throughout the map. For example, taking Roshan, sieging a tower, and general decisions kind of made by the team. On our team, everybody calls the shots, but we have a captain who makes the final decision if people are being indecisive, and that works very well for us. I would definitely suggest this if people are consistently not on the same page for your team in terms of decision making. It's typical for one of your supports to mainly call the shots, but this is something that differs depending on the team and the personalities of the players. Okay, so let's say you scrim weekly, your mechanical skills are on point, you're playing in amateur tournaments, and every player on your team is improving their play in terms of team play. Where do you go from there? This is when you want to enter into as many open qualifiers for medium tier tournaments as possible. So these are the tournaments with a few $1,000s in prizes. And you want to scavenge the Dota 2 subreddit, register your team for every single open qualifier tournament that you see on there. In North America, some really good medium tier tournaments that have nice open qualifiers are Canada Cup and CEVO. There's tons of them, but those are just a few. The goal of the medium tier tournaments isn't necessarily to win. Most of the top teams are likely to already play in these tournaments. If you win, then congratulations, you're probably already a pro Dota player. If you lose, that's fine. The point of these tournaments is to get an opportunity to play against as many established teams as possible. Most strong teams at this level are going to have a specific niche, and playing against as many as possible is going to allow you to build relationships for scrims, so you want to add people that you play, and more importantly, it's going to let you fortify your drafting and team play against all sorts of different wacky lineups. At the point where you're playing in medium level tournaments, you're already on the cusp of playing semi-professionally. Your main goal is to beat a team that was invited directly to that tournament, and what this proves is that you're capable of taking out an invited team, and this therefore proves that you're deserving of a direct invite to the tournament in future tournaments. So that's why you want to keep practicing and keep playing in these. Take games against known teams very seriously. Honestly, after this point, I can't really tell you anymore, because this is the point that we're at right now. Everybody's journey into the scene is totally different, because people are different, and the game changes. So maybe this won't work for you, maybe it will. It worked for us. If you're looking to make a splash in Dota, you're going to need to adapt, and more importantly, innovate. And that doesn't just go for the game, that involves your strategy with the community and getting into the scene. While there certainly is a lot of value in watching Dota 2, your team isn't anyone else's team. You're going to need to find your own playstyle, and you're going to need to build on it. So as long as your skills and your attitude stay up to par, eventually you're going to find your groove. You just need to keep practicing and keep playing consistently. Thanks for watching, guys.